Hey sewing fam, my name's Madi and today I am going to be showing you how to add either a cute little flounce or a ruffle to your garments. They're both super easy to do, but there is a difference between the two. So I thought first we'd spend a little bit of time talking about what exactly the difference is between a flounce and a ruffle. So let's just kind of hop right on into that. So let's start with the ruffle. Ruffles are, well, we see them all the time, right? They're pretty easy to make. You sew in 2 rows of gathering, and then you gather it all up, and then you apply it in the area that you would like. On the other hand, a flounce is actually cut in a circular direction. And I'm going to show you how to make one. But when you apply flounces, they don't have all of those gathers in at that seam. You see how flat that is? That is a flounce. I've seen flounces in really beautiful dresses where they start at the shoulder and come on down. I've seen total garments made of nothing but flounces. And you can see there are no gathers along that seam line where it's attached to the garment. Now, in comparison, here's a garment with ruffles. And you can see here that, yeah, you can absolutely see all of those little gathers right in there. And really, I think both are really cute, although a little different. So once again, flounce and ruffle, flounce and ruffle. So now that you know the difference between a flounce and a ruffle, let me show you how to make them. So let's head on over to the cutting table. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to make a flounce like this and add it into a seam of a dress, just like that. The first thing you're going to need is the fabric. So I'm going to use this piece and just fold it in half so it's right sides facing. And it is 15 by 16 roughly. It just happens to be what I had on hand. You're also going to need measuring tape, something to mark on your fabric with, and something to cut your fabric, so scissors or a rotary cutter. Okay, so I'm going to start with a dot in the center. It doesn't have to be exact, just get it somewhere in the center. Grab your measuring tape, and we're going to measure out to the edges in a couple of places. And so I think what I'm going to do is an 8-inch circle. So I'm just going to move my tape measure all the way around from that dot up. Oh, but here I have a bit of a problem. I don't have the 8 inches. I have about 7 3/4. So let me go back and mark everything. 7 3/4 all the way around. And when that's done, we're going to connect those dots so that way we have a big old circle to work with. Now grab your tape measure, and I'm going to start measuring out 2 inches from the edge here. And that's mostly just because I would like a flounce that's roughly 1 inch and a half wide after I hem the one side. So I'm going to mark all the way around this circle, that 2-inch line, as you see. Now you're going to want to stop measuring a little short of your first measurement because we're going to bring that first dot and connect it to the side of our circle. And then we're just going to continue to connect the 2-inch dots all the way around this circle. But we have to be a little careful when we get up to this section right here. So let's measure out 2 inches from that inner line. And we're going to do it all again. Just mark out your 2 inches all the way around. It doesn't have to be a pretty looking circle, but it's got to be circular. So just go ahead and mark it out, and then we're going to continue to connect all of the lines. just like this. When you get in towards this center, it's going to start to look a little funky, so we'll deal with that in a second. I'm just going to continue doing this until I feel like I just can't anymore. Okay, so now let's go ahead and cut the outside of our circle out. And this is what we have. Now we're going to cut along this little circle line, the spiral line that we made. So cut along that line. And I'm just going to kind of twist this as I cut to make it a little easier on myself. And you can see already that as I'm cutting and twisting this around, that flounce is starting to form. And as I get to the end here, it gets a little trickier to cut. The tighter the circle that you cut, the kind of more bouncier the flounce is. And you can see that there. I'm just going to go ahead and cut off this little end right here. And this is what our flounce looks like, and I'm really happy with that. And because I did cut 2 layers, I have my 2 different flounces, and well, it's plenty long to play around with. Before you attach this to the dress, you actually want to make sure that you hem it first. And so I'm going to just flip this over, and you can either fold it over 1/4 inch and then another 1/4 inch and then sew it all the way down. If you feel comfortable making a rolled hem, you can go ahead and take that onto your serger and do a rolled hem, or even on your sewing machine, and that'll be a beautiful finish. Or you can always just take your serger and serge along the edge. I like to cut off a little bit of the fabric as I'm serging along this edge, and I think it makes a really beautiful just kind of finish, and that would be really nice. Of course, if you just want to turn over the edge 1/4 inch and then another 1/4 inch, you can always use Wonder Tape, which is washable, and you place it on the backside of your fabric. You peel off that paper, fold it over, and that's 1/4 inch, and then you fold it over again, and then you can sew along. But you want to make sure that you put the Wonder Tape along the entire length of the fabric. For this flounce, I just went ahead and folded it over 1/4 inch and pressed that. And then here you can see that I've folded it over another 1/4 inch, and I've pinned that in place and pressed it. So now it's time to take it over to the sewing machine and just sew down this edge so that way we can hem it, and it'll look really beautiful when it's applied to the dress. This is what it looks like when it's all hemmed up. Not too bad. Now we need to add this in between our seam. And so we're going to sandwich this flounce right on in the middle there. So I'm going to start pinning it. But here's the thing. You actually don't want to go all the way up to the arm side like this if you're putting it into the same dress pattern. You want to make sure that you keep this flounce out of the seam allowance. And in this case, that's 3/8 seam allowance. But I'm just going to go ahead and continue to pin this all the way down my fabric, straightening out this flounce and making sure that my flounce is right side to right side with the very front piece of my fabric. And when it's all pinned on, it's going to look something like this. Okay, so now let's go ahead and we're going to need to grab the side panel piece, the other part of the seam, and we're going to put this right side facing down, right on over this flounce. Line up the piece and just pin it so that you capture the flounce right in between these two pieces. Now here's a trick. When you get to the bottom of your hem, you want to just kind of curve your flounce right off the edge right there so that it has a really nice smooth end. And you're going to want to do this up at the arm side within the seam allowance. Here it is all sewn up, and you can see where my flounce is sticking out on both sides. Now I'm just going to go ahead and cut that right on off at the top and the bottom. And this is what it looks like when you are all done. So go ahead and press your seam so that your flounce is facing the right direction, and this baby is good to go. Don't forget to finish your seam. I just serged my seam. And then you have a really cute flounce that you've added to your dress. And now for the ruffle, I just cut a strip that is 2 inches wide. And now I'm going to go ahead and hem that edge a 1/4 inch and then another 1/4 inch down, just like this. And this is what it looks like when you sew it down and hem that edge. Now we need to put in 2 basting stitches all the way down from one side to the other, so that way we can gather the length. After you pull on those bobbin threads, this is what your ruffle is going to look like. And you can see all those really cute little gathers in there. I think it looks really sweet. So now it's time to add these to our dress. So now we're going to pin this ruffle with the right side facing the right side of your front panel. And we're going to pin it in place. Now, keep in mind, you're going to want to keep this ruffle out of the seam allowance of that armhole, which is also called an arm side. So make sure that you keep it out of there. You can curve it out just like we did the flounce, but the reason why you're going to want to do that is because it will look really wonky if you don't, and I'm going to show you what that looks like in a second. So pin your second piece of fabric right on over the ruffle, sandwiching it in between. And this is what that sandwiched little ruffle is going to look like with that little curved out piece at the hem. Remember how I told you to keep it out of the seam allowance? Well, there. This is why, because if you accidentally sew in that ruffle into that seam allowance, it looks really strange, you all. This is not the look we are going for. It is not cute. So I actually had to unpick it and pull it back out of my seam allowance and curve it lower, so that way it stays out of my arm side. It stays out of that second seam allowance when I attach to the side panel, and it's so much cuter. So definitely keep your ruffles and your flounces out of your seam allowances. And so now that you know what a flounce versus a ruffle is and how to actually make both of them, have fun just trying out both techniques on your dresses. And you can even do this on big girl dresses too, like big girl dresses. So have fun with the technique. Let me know if you plan on trying this out on any of your dresses down in the comments below. And if you missed the cap sleeve tutorial, which was how to add these little sleeves onto your dresses, you can catch that video right over there. The next tutorial that I'm bringing you is going to be how to make fabric bows and butterflies. So stay tuned for that. And until then, don't forget that I love you and I hope that you have a wonderful day.